Welcome to Stories Room. Enjoy listening and don't forget to subscribe. Artem sat at a table in a half-empty restaurant, nervously glancing at his watch. The quiet hum of other people's conversations filled the air, but everything around him seemed like a dull backdrop as he mentally rehearsed the speech he was about to give. Today, he planned to surprise his wife, Paulina, with a dinner in a cozy place where they had once celebrated their wedding anniversary. He hoped this would help reignite the faded feelings after 20 years of marriage. Soon, Artem noticed Paulina entering the restaurant, and he froze. She wasn't alone. Beside her walked Dmitry, his best friend. Artem's mouth went dry, and his heart clenched. He didn't know how to interpret this appearance. Paulina? Dima? Artem's voice broke into a whisper. "Hi," his wife responded curtly, not meeting his eyes. Instead, she took Dmitry's arm and sat opposite Artem. A thick stack of papers fell onto the table. There was a thud, and from that sound, everything inside Artem tightened. He looked down, quickly scanning the top sheet, and saw the word divorce. "Paulina, what's going on?" he managed to squeeze out. "Artem, I'm tired of living in emptiness." There was a strange, cold determination in her voice. "And I've transferred all our savings to my separate account. I don't need you anymore." Artem listened, unable to believe his ears. They had been together for 20 years, raised 2 children, and now, in an instant, everything was falling apart. He shifted his gaze to Dmitry, who only smirked with a lazy raise of his eyebrow. "Brother, it happens. People change, whether you want it or not." Paulina glanced at her phone, casually brushing a strand of hair aside. "Tomorrow, Dima and I are leaving for a vacation. We're starting a new life. And the kids, they're your responsibility now, Artem." With those words, she stood up, habitually took Dmitry's arm, and left the restaurant without even looking back. Everything around Artem darkened. He heard the background music, heard people quietly talking. Someone even looked at him with sympathy but didn't intervene. It was as if he was lost in the fog of his own thoughts. Finally, Artem stood up, mechanically grabbed the papers, and stepped out into the night. Returning to an empty apartment was hard. The kids, 2 teenage boys, were staying with their grandmother so that the parents could have more time to talk. How bitterly those words now sounded. Artem dropped his bag in the hallway and walked into the living room where family photos hung on the wall. He looked long at a photo from Italy. Paulina was laughing and hugging him. Now, it seemed like a cheap act. With trembling hands, Artem opened his laptop and checked their joint account. What he saw was even worse than he had imagined. Paulina had indeed taken almost all the money. She left only crumbs. There was a knock at the door, and reluctantly, he got up to open it. Standing there was Oleg, Artem's work colleague and longtime friend, who was evidently already aware of the scandal. "Listen, Artem, I heard about you and Paulina. It's a nightmare. How are you?" Artem sighed heavily, gesturing for his friend to come in. "Come in. I wouldn't mind talking." They went to the kitchen. Oleg poured himself some water, and Artem, trying to control his emotions, recounted everything from the beginning. When he finished, a tense silence filled the room. "I sympathize, buddy," Oleg said quietly. "But do you realize that in court, she won't be able to just brush everything off? Leaving the children while taking the money, that's no laughing matter." "I have no choice but to go to a lawyer," Artem nodded grimly. Understanding flickered in his friend's eyes. "Talk to Veronika Sokolova tomorrow. She's an excellent lawyer. She'll help file the documents, contest the withdrawal of funds. You need to fight." The next morning, Artem was already sitting in Veronika's spacious office, a well-known family law attorney. She listened carefully as he, stuttering, recounted everything that had happened, from Paulina's betrayal to the vile alliance with Dmitry. "So she took all the money, left you with the kids, and effectively ran away?" Veronika clarified, flipping through the papers. "Yes. Here are the divorce papers." He handed her the same stack that Paulina had so easily thrown onto the restaurant table. Veronika frowned. "Don't think about signing anything. The court will take into account that she left the family without means of living. Moreover, you can easily demand child support. I don't want her money, Artem grumbled darkly. I just want justice. For her to understand that you can't treat children and someone you've lived with for so many years like this. I understand your feelings, Veronica replied more softly, but you can't be without resources. The children are growing. They need clothes, food, education. So this isn't money from Paulina, but legally mandated support. Plus, we can freeze some of the accounts if she hasn't already spent everything. Artem shook his head skeptically. Are you sure the court won't take her side? Definitely not. It won't be easy for her. Especially since I have contacts in child welfare. They don't look kindly on those who abandon their children. Veronica looked at him restrainedly but sympathetically. For the first time since the betrayal, Artem felt a slight relief. He felt he had found an ally, and it gave him strength. A couple of days later, a plan began to form in Artem's mind. While Veronica dealt with the legal documents, he started looking for a way to hit Dmitry. After all, this man not only destroyed his family but also cynically enjoyed others' suffering. It turned out that Dmitry's business, related to commercial supplies, wasn't as clean as he tried to portray. Through mutual acquaintances, Artem found out that over the last 6 months, Dmitry had been conducting cunning schemes, falsifying reports. Clients hadn't noticed yet, but if the materials came to light, I don't want to break the law, Artem told Veronica when sharing his findings. But I won't stay silent. If he thought he could get away with everything, he's mistaken. I understand your motivations, the lawyer nodded. Just be careful. But otherwise, it's all legal. Revealing the truth about fraud is not a crime. Artem secretly sent anonymous letters to Dmitry's potential victims, backed by copies of documents. Questions and calls started pouring in almost immediately. Dmitry's clients began to visibly panic. Contracts were at risk of collapsing, and his financial stream was under threat. You know, they say Dmitry won't have time for romantic trips now. He's trying to plug holes and quell the client scandal. Veronica called Artem one evening, cheerfully sharing this news. All this work, both legal and digging, did not drown out the personal pain. At night, Artem still remembered how he and Paulina once dreamed of a house by the sea, how they rejoiced in their first car, chose baby strollers together, and argued over wallpaper colors. He couldn't believe it had all ended so vilely. But now he had a goal, to restore justice and take care of his children. He needed to explain everything to his sons, support them when they missed their mom. And the more he dealt with their daily lives, helping with school projects, organizing weekend trips, the more he understood that this was the real family. Once, his eldest son, noticing him looking at a family photo, asked, "Dad, we'll manage, right?" And Artem, though his chest still ached, managed to nod confidently. "Of course, son. We have each other." At one of the court hearings where the division of property and child custody was decided, Paulina and Dmitry appeared, sullen and irritated by something. Paulina radiated irritation, snapping at the lawyer's questions, complaining that Artem was just seeking revenge, and that she wanted happiness and freedom. Dmitry sat beside her, morosely throwing unfriendly glances at Artem. Veronica smiled reservedly, presenting Artem's case. "My client provides evidence that Ms. Paulina abandoned minor children to the care of one parent, took all family savings, and used them improperly, as confirmed by the bank statements." Artem felt a surge of hope seeing the judge frown, looking at the documents and noting down the testimonies. Looking at the scene, he realized he was no longer afraid. Anger and pain hadn't gone away, but understanding had taken their place. He was doing the right thing. The final decision was still up to the court, but the freezing of accounts had already taken effect. Their romantic plans were clearly falling apart, and Dmitry, tangled in his business troubles, was issuing threats with much less confidence. Veronica met with Artem after another hearing. "If everything goes according to plan, you'll get custody of the children, some of the money will be returned, and Paulina will face serious consequences for her actions." Artem listened, feeling a quiet relief growing inside. Was this nightmare finally coming to an end? Could a way out be found to start anew? Thanks for not letting me give up, he said, looking Veronica in the eyes. We haven't won yet, she replied, but her warm smile softened her serious look. However, you've already shown you won't let them treat you and your children like objects. So, Artem, there's still a lot ahead. He just nodded. Yes, much was left to endure and prove. But now he wasn't alone. He had the support of his children, friends, and a new, reliable ally in the form of Veronica. His heart grew lighter. Paulina and Dmitri's betrayal didn't mean the end of his story. Rather, it was a new chapter, more complex but promising freedom from lies and manipulations. And Artem was ready to write it. Evening had come. Artem returned from Veronica's office to his home and headed straight for the kitchen, where his sons, Maxim and Timofey, were waiting for him. Dinner plates were already on the table, and although it all looked routine, he noticed how tense the boys were the moment he walked in. Dad, Timofey, the middle son, began, peering at his father's face. How did it go? Artem took off his jacket and managed a faint smile. Not bad. We convinced the judge to accept some of our motions. Now the official decision about custody and child support is in progress. Maxim, the older son, frowned. What about Mom? Did she even show up? Yes, Artem tried to sound composed, though the mention of Dmitri stuck in his throat, along with the memory of his smug expression. She arrived with him, but it seems they weren't expecting things to go this way. The boys sighed, and Artem changed the subject so as not to burden them with legal details. Inside, however, a storm of anger raged, toward Paulina for abandoning the family and Dmitri for his brazen betrayal. Despite his attempts to remain civil, the pain from their treachery still simmered. Artem stopped by Veronica's office. She was poring over paperwork at a large desk by the window. There's something important, she said, beckoning him closer. We're filing an official request to freeze some of Paulina's property. If we prove she's been using your joint funds irresponsibly, the court may approve it. Artem nodded, cold determination rising within him. I fully support it. Let her feel the consequences of taking everything without a second thought. Veronica set down the documents, a slight crease forming on her brow. How are you holding up? You don't look tired. You look keyed up. Maybe it's because I want more than just a fair split, Artem admitted, hands clenched together. It's not enough for her to return some money and walk away. I want both her and that friend of mine to taste the destruction they've put me through. Veronica's eyes flickered with concern, but she nodded. I understand your feelings. We can press harder within the law, like filing a complaint about hidden income, if there's proof Paulina or Dmitri are involved in shady financial dealings. I've done some digging, Artem said, his gaze turning grim. Dmitri isn't as squeaky clean as everyone thinks. He's got issues with fraudulent accounting and inflated figures. He's also using offshore schemes. If the opportunity arises to accidentally pass this along to the tax authorities, we'll have some fun. Veronica pondered briefly, then spoke. In essence, you're not breaking any laws if you simply inform the authorities. But be careful. If any evidence appears forged or illegally obtained, it could backfire in court. However, Artem cut her off. I'm not forging anything. A friend of mine works at a company that partnered with Dmitri. He gathered evidence in case of a future inspection. So let's say, this time bomb is all set. Artem got confirmation from Veronica that the court had frozen some of Paulina's assets. The situation was escalating quickly, and now Paulina needed to explain to the judge exactly what she had done with the family funds she'd withdrawn. Meanwhile, Dmitri, facing canceled contracts, was frantically trying to patch up his failing business. Word of a pending tax investigation, triggered by an anonymous tip loaded with incriminating details, proved to be the last straw. He supposedly took out a loan to salvage his firm, Veronica informed Artem on Monday when he stopped by her office. Paulina hoped for his money, but now they're both panicking. Seems that dream wedding is on indefinite hold. Artem looked away. Once upon a time, He had considered Dmitry a real friend, someone to trust. Now, he wasn't sure whether to celebrate the news or mourn the demise of something that used to be good. "It's only fair," he finally replied. "Let him pay the price for his deceit." Paulina showed up alone, concealing her fury poorly. Artem noticed the dark circles under her eyes. She tugged at her jacket and stormed over to Veronica. "You did all this, didn't you? Because of you, my accounts are frozen. I can't withdraw money for tickets we already bought." Her voice turned shrill. Veronica responded icily. "No, it's because of your own actions. The court, after reviewing the evidence, found you took joint funds and never used them for the children. Take it up with yourself." Paulina glowered at Artem with venom. "You think you've gotten your revenge, huh? Go ahead, but sooner or later, Dmitry and I will get what's ours." Artem merely shrugged and held her gaze. He refused to show his pain. By now, he was guarded by a steady, cold certainty. "Yes, this is my revenge, and it's far from over." Artem got word the tax authorities had received a complete file on Dmitry's firm. Several shareholders and clients joined forces in a collective complaint. A full audit was just a matter of time. Dmitry, realizing he was in free fall, began calling everyone they both knew, complaining about unfounded allegations. But no one wanted to get entangled in his drama. Too many people had been hurt by his schemes. Seeing how busy their father was, the children were initially anxious. However, they soon realized he was fighting for them. Maxim helped Artem with day-to-day chores, cooking dinner, looking after his younger brother, while Timofey tried to cope with his sadness. He took comfort in the fact that Artem wasn't giving up but was fighting back, giving them hope for stability. Another court session was scheduled. Artem arrived early, sitting in the hallway, waiting for Veronica. When she arrived, satisfaction gleamed in her eyes. "The audit of Dmitry's company is in full swing. His business is pretty much paralyzed. Word is he blames Paulina for everything. Your conflict, the frozen accounts. And they're apparently arguing over who should pay for their lawyer. Both are pointing fingers." Artem smirked. "Let them drown in their mess. I'm not sorry it turned out this way. The only thing that truly bothers me is that my sons lost the mother they once knew." He felt a twinge of guilt. Was this payback too harsh? Yet recalling Paulina's betrayal and her contemptuous words reminded him that they had earned every ounce of what came to them. His actions were merely a response to their cruelty. Paulina did not approach Artem that day. Their eyes locked briefly in the courtroom, but any hint of former closeness or remorse was gone, replaced by mutual resentment and exhaustion. The judge reviewed the evidence and formally ruled that the children would stay with Artem. Paulina was ordered to pay child support and return a portion of the shared funds she had withdrawn without authorization. After the verdict was read, Paulina stood and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Artem stayed seated, as if unable to believe he'd finally heard a just decision. "Congratulations," Veronica said, resting a hand on his shoulder. "This ended better than we could have hoped. We'll still have some formalities to wrap up, but you've won the main battle." Artem stood, looking at Veronica with a heavy sigh. "Thanks. It's strange. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but all I sense is emptiness. Yet I have no regrets. And I'm sure they'll face more repercussions, from the tax audit to creditors and everyone they owe." "That often happens," Veronica offered a small smile. "Revenge can be bitter. But it was necessary, so they'd realize they can't just destroy someone's life without consequences." "Now I need to rebuild mine," Artem replied quietly. "My priority is making sure the kids are okay. Everything else will come together somehow." Leaving the courtroom, he turned one last time and spotted Dmitry lurking in the corridor, whispering nervously into his phone. Once upon a time, Artem had called that man his closest friend, more like a brother. Now they were enemies on different sides of a war, and Artem felt no pity, only relief that justice was served. He turned and walked away with Veronica beside him, heading for the exit. Yes, a new life awaited him. Without legal battles, without constant fear of losing his children, without blind trust in those who didn't deserve it. He was sure of only one thing. He'd had his revenge. It didn't bring easy relief, but it gave him a chance at a future where he and his sons could finally live on their own terms. That's the end of our story. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on new stories and share this video so others can discover these great stories too.